Hello. Now, hopefully, will I check? Will I check? All right, right. It's saying it's still saying notify me, but it might take a second to turn up. Yeah, no, I'm there. All right. Okay, so I have been so looking forward to this one. Ridiculously excited about it. I don't know why. Whether it's a change of subject matter or probably what I think it is that I have so many tips and tricks for portrait drawing. Because I've done loads and loads of portraits and always loved doing them. And have an approach to them that I think you'll really, really like. And the name of this live stream has a one at the end of it, right? Um, and that is because I might do a few of these in a row because I'm thinking about it. I think I've so many tips and tricks that I can't fit them all in an hour. And even during the week, because I got all excited about this topic, I did two shorts videos and they are relevant to some of the tips and tricks. But I've so many things lined up for you today um, that I thought I'd do those two separately, but I will talk about them today as well. So there'll be some drawing, there'll be some exercises to improve your drawing for portrait drawing specifically, and there will be a story about a painting that is going to be very relevant to your outlook about portrait drawing. And I'm leaving this as portrait drawing rather than portrait painting because doing something well in art with painting, it always starts with drawing. And this weird little layout here is about one of the shorts that I did during the week. And the shorts are over on the shorts tab if you want to see this. This one is only about 10, they're all only about 10, 15 seconds long. This one is called Light in Portraits. And this was a prop in that little video. And it was to illustrate a point. And it's a good starting point. And I have one of the props I have today is a little light, and I'm going to put the light on to illustrate this particular point. And you can go over and watch the video. You'll get the point better watching the video. But you see, I had the light shining from different directions on those drawings, and these drawings feature in the video, and they were to represent what direction that pearl represents the sun, what direction the sun is coming from. And it shows shading on a face in different ways. What the shading is like, coming from one side in the morning, what it's like overhead, and what it's like coming from the other side, basically. So the sun would be in three different positions, wouldn't it? And this idea of shading defining the face is very, very important. Now, if you're going to want to join in this session today, that'd be great because you'll learn so much, okay? And you won't regret getting the pencil out. You'll only need one pencil. It's good to have a 2B pencil and a softer one, a 4B, anything down to an 8B, really. Probably a 4 to 6B is probably your best bet for these exercises. But actually, we're going to really be doing it with this 4B pencil here. So um, they're going to be fairly soft drawings and loose drawings, right? The other short video that I'd like you to watch if you're interested in getting better at portraits and portrait drawing is the newest one on my channel. So those two short videos are together. The one that's illustrating the point about the sun illuminating a face, is the second last video I did. And then the last video I did is called Drawing Lines Uses question mark. And you'll see a picture of a hand on that because I'm illustrating a point about how your hands move when you're drawing a portrait. So you will need your pencil out and a big sketch pad. If you have a big sketch pad, that'd be great because we're going to be just sketching loosely today. Sometimes we're sketching and we want to get a finished piece and we want to keep our paper all nice and neat. We don't care today, okay? We don't care at all. We'll end up with a nice messy page probably, or use a few pages we don't mind. But we're going to be thinking about staying loose. And the reason you need to stay loose is you need to be able to draw a face accurately, okay? And there are a few things involved in that. You could say the same of anything, but really, portrait painting, you need this skill more than if you're doing landscape or something, or even still life, because how you get a likeness of somebody, which some of portraiture is about getting a likeness, right? How you get a likeness of somebody is getting all the different points on their face, like eyes, eyebrows, nose, mouth, shape of the face, angle of jaw and cheekbones and everything, collarbones, width of the neck, all these things, getting them spot on. Okay, so it's about measuring distances between things and accuracy. Accuracy not just in seeing, but in translating what you're seeing down through your pencil onto the paper. So that's a big challenge. So if you're uptight about that, you're not going to be as accurate, possibly. Why would that be? Well, it's illustrated in that little video, right? So that little shorts video on the shorts tab called Drawing Lines uses and then question mark illustrates the point. But I'll try and illustrate the point again. And I'm going to bring on a little egghead friend of mine here to help illustrate the point, okay? And yes, it is an egg. When you think about a head, right, it's not really far off an egg shape. You know, you hear people being called eggheads. And it rests on a little pillar that is the neck, and then it has um, shoulders coming out from it. So this would be enough for this to be considered a portrait. Sometimes you see people doing this, drawing an egg shape floating in space with no neck, right? It's a head, right? But is it really a portrait? Or is it like a little iconic thing, like a primitive representation of something? Particularly if somebody then comes along and does, this is somebody maybe who's not like really super duper at drawing heads, and everybody has to start somewhere, don't they? This kind of a thing, you know, you come along, you draw little outlines, and it does look like a head, not super realistic, but you know, it's a head floating in space, isn't it? Really, when you think about it, it's fine, but it lacks kind of, you know, the sophistication of this kind of thing. Hello, and welcome to the stream. Thanks for dropping in. Yeah, your first art teacher. We all remember them. So Egghead is a great art teacher as well because Egghead here teaches you about how light hits things. And if you want to move from this kind of representation of a head, which is fine for some purposes and can be very powerful and strong and convey something symbolic that's really interesting. But if you want to move from this kind of representation of a head more towards a more naturalistic representation like top ones, really then you're going to be thinking about light and shade in order to make that head seem 3D curved in some way, right? I'm going to bring out another friend to illustrate this point. And the thing about the last video that I was talking about there, that's a point about how to use your hand to get to this, because it starts seeming like a big task to get from this to this, because shading is it can be intimidating. You've only got this little thing to do that with. And once you've got all this done, even getting those shapes, you find you might be like, oh, tongue sticking out, trying to get things in the right place. And how do you get these to line up? It's a lot, isn't it? So then you've got to come along and shade things. Oh my goodness, it's a lot of work. Well, I'm here to prove it's not that much work. My little friend, meet my little friend, Tony. And Tony, he looks a bit like Yul Brynner, doesn't he, in Westworld? Remember that old film? I love that film. It was a series as well, but Yul Brynner was brilliant in it. But that's probably because Tony, he ain't got much hair. But Tony is a great teacher, right? He can teach us a lot. So we've got Egghead and we've got Tony, and they're both going to teach us things, right? So we're going to move from this egg shape, working from the general into getting more specific, like these ones. That's how you move towards getting things a bit more exact. So let's have a look at the implement that you're drawing with first. So we've got one tip going already, and that is think of the head like an egg that is receiving light. Okay, remember our little pearl was the sun, and the sun moves from, what does it rise in the east and sets in the west, goes overhead, that's the noonday sun, and sets in such a way that the shadow is on the other side of the head. So we have the shadow on pretty much on one side of the head quite heavily, but my light source is coming from up here. And you always want to think about, where's the light source coming from? It's coming from behind, above a little bit, and there's some up here at this point. So already this is a bit more shaped, but it doesn't have any features. And Tony is the guy that has the features. But look at the lighting. It's the same lighting hitting the egg as is hitting Tony. Okay? And so yeah, Tony is basically an egghead. Same thing, same lighting hit him. He's got some dark here, much lighter here on the front. Lot of stuff happening beneath the nose and everything in terms of shadow. Same as our midday sun up here, where the light source was coming from above and a little bit behind. I mean, the light could be coming from straight front of somebody as well, and you won't see as much shadow underneath things if it's that way. But what I'm saying is that you should be thinking about where the light is coming from. So the next thing, the pencil that you're working with. Now I did say a soft pencil, and it's a 4B we're working with today. But I included this 2B here. You can see that they're sharpened differently. And I included the 2B sharpened that way to illustrate something. I'm using, somebody was asking about a light here, and I'm just using a little a light source that's a little sort of mobile light thing that I use to light up the faces to illustrate what we're doing, but the light source is actually natural light, and natural light is lovely to work with. I am sitting with a window up here in front of me. So any light is coming from that window. Now I have a window behind me as well, and um I don't want to worry you with the idea that light can be coming from several directions. So I'm trying to simple it down a little bit for you so that you don't feel that you have too many things to balance in your mind when you're starting into this. But I do have some light coming from behind me as well. But don't worry about that too much, okay? Um, you could actually see from the egg that it wasn't just light coming from that direction, that there's light bouncing from other ways as well, because this is actually the lightest spot here. Um, which, if all the light was coming from that direction, that would not be the lightest spot, you know. Right, now, the reason that I have these sharpened differently is that I want to suggest something to you, and it's about how people use their pencils. And I see a lot of problems happening with the way people hold their pencils and the way they sharpen their pencils, right? And they're kind of they're problems because they're things that can take away from how good the drawing looks. And for example, the first issue, the pencil, right? This looks like it's just done in this sort of a, pencil pair that has this kind of a sharpening thing, right? Fine. Now you sharpen it up and it's sharp for a minute, and then you keep working away with it. And what you get is the same line all the way. But as you keep working, this is why I said This is why I said we're going to have a messy page here, folks. This is about getting nice and loose. As you keep working away, try and make the same line as your first one, and you'll find that that line is getting softer and softer. And it's the same thickness all the way down and everything because I'm holding it at the same angle. Okay. You're working with more of a nub of a pencil all the time if you don't keep sharpening that. So that's one point that you have to be aware when your pencil is coming down very low and needs to be sharpened again. And for this reason, I prefer to get some sort of a craft knife that is a safety one that you can pull the blade in or out and locks in place when you are sharpening, and to sharpen that this way with things instead. Very carefully carving a little bit of wood off the side of your pencil and then coming along and just pushing with your finger to get a very good point on your pencil. And you have to be very gentle about this to get a good point going. But you get a longer kind of a point. And why does that matter? Because you have a choice of ways to hold your pencil then. You can hold your pencil. I was holding it up at kind of this upwards ish angle initially to get the very point of it, right? But if you relax your fingers down a bit, you can shade using the side as well, and it's softer. And we will be using that technique, right? Now you can see how when we're doing our egghead, and the egghead thing is going to demonstrate something as well. You see the way I'm going round and around? This is called finding the line, okay? But it's a wonderful warm-up exercise. Very, very handy warm-up exercise. And then look at my hand is going to the side to do that shading. And you can actually, shade things then with your finger or with one of these little hooks, which shades things. So you got all that going on. You can also remove areas with what we Irish and European people call a rubber, and Americans think that's hilarious because it means something else to them. But you'll get over it, okay? I'm just going to call it a rubber because that's what it is to me, or it's an eraser to you guys. And this one is a putty rubber or kneadable rubber or kneadable eraser, okay? And that's a particularly handy one if you're working with charcoal, okay? But we're working with pencil because charcoal can be a little bit difficult to handle. And I might actually be doing a video later with charcoal to show a particular teaching point that I want to do about portraits as well. So look out for a third short video about portraits here. Oh, I'm really spoiling you guys. But like, you're gonna learn a lot here. You're gonna learn a lot. And actually, I am probably making this a bit chock-a-block now. But already, if you're drawing along with me, you're already learning. And we haven't even looked at our reference photos yet to actually start drawing from. But you need these skills before we can start drawing. And before we start drawing, I'm just going to talk about the way you hold your pencil. I have seen people holding a pencil in a kind of a claw way, you know, where the thumb is kind of fairly tight and this finger is tight. And what happens if you do that? Just be aware that it's going to make this muscle tight as well, right? When that muscle is tight, bear in mind that the tightness from that big muscle from your thumb and the tightness of this finger making that claw like holding in of the pencil shape is making your wrist tight as well and the slight tightness going up your forearm. And that matters. Say I was going to do that shape, that oval shape, and I'll get the egg out of the way because look, that's an accident waiting to happen, isn't it? We'll move Tony as well. Tony, Mook, off you go, Tony. So I want to move the paper over, you see. So let's say I'm holding my pencil in that kind of tight way, and I'm trying to make this oval. Well, it'll be a lot more work trying to make it, right? And let's say that I'm tight in the shoulders as well. That's even harder, isn't it? Because if you hold your shoulder tight and try this, try doing this, and you'll see the difference. I can do this, but it's so much work compared to taking your pencil, and I actually have a little lump on my finger from doing this, and resting your pencil there. You've got a knuckle um, bone there, a joint there, right? Rest it against the joint, curve your middle finger, and rest the bottom of the pencil against that. And then your index finger and your thumb are really just holding the pencil gently with this as what your pencil is resting on, right? And one of my short videos illustrates that because it shows it from the side and it shows me drawing. So do have a look at that one and have a little think. Sometimes having a little think about how you're doing things can be very interesting because minor changes can make a huge difference to your drawing. And so drawing this oval shape, and I'm going to switch over to the other side. I was actually using that for something else. So, like, why waste paper? Just keep using the same thing. So I'm holding the pencil nice and loose now, and look at the other side of my hand. It's just curved. And sometimes I can lean on the paper, and sometimes when I'm painting, you'll see me using my little finger as a leany post, right? And then just, while that stays like a little tripod holding me up, I might do things here with the paintbrush and everything. So there's a few ways to go about it. But when you're doing this oval, I actually have the oval kind of sideways there. Look what's happening with my hand. The fingers are moving, right? Fingers can move freely, including the thumb. There's no clawness going on. This can move as well, but the movement can be quite free all the way down. So if I'm doing something bigger or I want to go circular, my wrist can move as well. See the way you can get a nice curve when your wrist moving. So try these exercises. These are limbering up exercises. Then try getting a sensation of your elbow and your shoulder being involved by doing a really big line. Okay? More literally, we're wrecking this piece of paper now. Go in different directions. So you see how my hand isn't moving a whole lot. It's just loosely holding the pencil, very relaxed. But the arm is moving quite a bit. So if I wanted to draw a really big head, look what happens. The whole arm is involved, yeah? So look at the size of that head. That's about the biggest you'd want to go on a portrait head. But there's quite a lot of the arm involved in that. Then, for my shading and everything, the wrist gets more involved there, doesn't it, you see? But you see how much looser that is than if I was doing this thing, or sometimes you see people doing, I don't know, some kind of weird thing like that. I don't know how that one works. I would not be able to do anything doing that because it just be so tightened up. So try a few little adjustments and just see if you can get that kind of looseness. It should be so loose that you feel like the pencil might fly out of your hand at any stage. It can do. I'm forever dropping pencils and paintbrushes, but I hold things that loosely for a reason. It's to free you up because the more free that you're relaxed your hand is when you're drawing, the better your drawing is going to be because it's a straight line from basically from your brain right down to your fingertips doing what you want to do. But it's clear from what I've shown you that drawing is a fine motor coordination thing for when you're working on small details, like say you're working in the pupil of an eye. That's the fingers, isn't it? Working on that. Then you're doing something bigger like an eye socket. That's more wrist. Then you're doing a big shape for a head, whole arm is moving. Yeah. So that's all very loose and fluid to do that. So those exercises are great for getting the hang of that. So remember that you're also working with thin lines and then the shaded lines are your soft pencil more on its side. Okay. And then there's there are different tricks like you lean a little bit heavier. So there's going to be more muscle tension doing that, isn't there? So try all these exercises. Go back over the video if you need to. If you don't have a pencil or you didn't get here from the beginning, go back again from the beginning because I do go along in a structured way in this video. And you should find as you're doing the exercises with me, you're loosening up more and more. Now, we have our egg shaped down, don't we? And I didn't really mean to do it that big, but doesn't matter, because we're keeping it nice and loose, you see. So this is not our reference head, but I'm going to give you a clue how we're going to do our reference head. And you've done your egg shape, haven't you? You want to have a neck shape. So you don't have the head floating in space thing going, okay? So that is literally going to the edge of your egg shape and dropping a line down either side. Because remember what I said about we're moving from the general, making generalizations about things, towards the specific, getting more precise and exact as we go along, honing in. So this bit here is just your shoulders, okay? So, but it's stopping all that floating in space feeling. And this cross down the middle helps you locate nose and eyes. I got that a bit off center. So for that size face, people have different widths between their eyes, but generally speaking, um, the bridge of the nose is a great place to start, and it's going to be about halfway down that egg shape. Okay. And you can make adjustments and will be making adjustments to heights and things as you go along. You might decide, oh, that forehead is lower down. Well, instead of getting your rubber out, your eraser out, um, and carefully rubbing out every little line, let let some of the lines that you put down already stay. We're not too worried about having extra lines coming around. And they're actually very attractive. I mean, look at the drawings I did the last time. All the original lines, you can see the original lines that I put in on the face for marking out, nose and eyes, and they're still there. They're quite an attractive thing to leave in sometimes. And sometimes you can see the evidence of those left for quite late in the picture before anybody rubs anything out. The other thing, going to get Tony back for a minute. Then I want to show you before we actually work from the reference photo, because we're going to be quite quick about doing this reference photo, is poor Tony, because I'm going to mutilate him here. And going to take one of his eyeballs out, yeah? And this is to illustrate a point as well. Tony, he doesn't have, I've flattened the back of his head because he is a plasticine guy who was on my piece of paper, so the back of his head went flat. But he has an eye socket, right? That the eyeball fits into nicely, yeah? And I do not want you to forget that that's how an eye works. An eye works visually by being an eyeball that fits into a socket. So one way to draw eyes, this is what I'm going to make the next video about. I'm not going to do it exactly like this, but we have the bridge of the nose marking here, right? And center of the face is the line right down the middle that marks center point of the bridge of the nose, okay? If you do a little oval either side of those and just leave a little bit of space on either side, like it's like a pair of glasses, right? You've basically got a space in which to place the eyes, okay? And you've got a space in which to place eyeballs, haven't you? So in the middle, it makes sense to say that in the middle of that space, the pupil resides. So people have terrible difficulty sometimes lining up eyes where they've worked very carefully on one eye, maybe. They might have done it in this way, this doing this shape, which it's a sensible plan, but it can look very stuck on when you do that. They might have done this and then done this thing, and that's an eye, and they'll put on eyelashes and things, and then they'll go, okay, that sort of looks like an eye, and I've got an eyebrow. Oh, I'm not sure how to do the nose now. It always looks stuck on when you do that. But if you plan it out this way, that it's an eyeball, you understand the way the light is hitting it. And when you put in things like your pupil and your iris, you're understanding how they fit in. Because even underneath, you're working with shadow underneath the eye, aren't you? And it's all fitting into this eye socket shape. And you can see how the socket works there. And I will, that's why I was going to do this in charcoal. I will be coming along and doing this. You can go back over, take things back up to white, the bits where the light is hitting, you see, because that's what happens. Light isn't going to be always coming from that direction. That's where our light is coming from. Let's look at all the different. This is why I'm saying you have to be aware of where the light's coming from. Look, we'll move the light. The light could even be coming from underneath. That's quite a tricky one to do, that underneath one. And if you want to get yourself a bit of plasticine and model with ovals and little circular things for eyeballs, and get kiddie about it and do those kind of shapes for lips and things. You can make your own model, and all you need is a torch or something then to test out different lighting conditions, and you then have a model sitting for you without having to get somebody sitting for you for hours at a time. Don't If you get anybody nice enough to sit for you, try not to make them sit for more than, say, about 20 minutes, I think is kind of enough for people. So there you are. Look at what's happening there. You see how the idea, the concept of having a eye socket is really working well for us. And then we're working from the general to the specific, remember. So we're working all over the face and at the same time, kind of, and then closing in on the likeness. So you see how it's already taken on quite a lot of naturalistic feeling in terms of lighting and everything from doing fairly simple things with the jet. I always feel putting ears in as well helps the likeness for some reason. Even when ears are hidden, if you had hair over that, still placing the ears before the hair happens. Now, different people are going to have features slightly different sizes and in different positions and everything. So it's specific to somebody. I mean, that's clearly not looking like Tony. But if I get the height of his eyebrows, the shape of his eyebrows and everything correct in the right place, it'd start looking very like Tony. And if I started kind of doing things that are specific to his mouth, you know, that'd be more Tony-ish then, wouldn't it? But it starts off in a general way and works into the specific. So let's you've done your loosening up stuff. You've worked with the idea of the egg, thinking of the head as an egg. You've worked with the idea of the neck as a pillar that should be there to stop the head floating in space. Um, you can even think of things like backgrounds and everything as well, and really enjoy doing shading for your background if you've got dark backgrounds and anything. That can really, help portrait as well to situate it in space. But really once you get the shape of the head, the neck, and the shading, and how to and understand to have your hand loose enough to be able to do this kind of shading, that you can then keep working on it in a nice loose way as you observe the thing. So as you observe is quite important, because we're going to now go and look at our reference material. So our reference material today is, I did post about this earlier on the community tab. It's not Tony, okay? It is from a painting. I'm gonna get the point back on this while I'm talking here. So to find our reference, if you want to have a go at, now we've warmed up at working from our reference, this is going to take about 10 minutes, 15 minutes doing this. The photo I posted of the painting. We're actually working from a painting. We're going to do a portrait from a painting. It's posted on the community tab, and you could pop over, open up that tab, find the post, which is just put up today, and pop open this live stream in another tab if you want to actually work from the reference piece as I'm working. Um, and you should find that now you're a lot looser after doing exercises. You didn't necessarily have to do that head that big. You could have made it a bit smaller. You could have brought it down to this size. But remember, if you work too big or too small, you have extra difficulties. That's a little bit small, that size to work in, I think, for what we're going to do now. So what we're doing now, we've only got 15 minutes left, but we've covered a lot. We're going to work from this portrait, right? And it's on the community tab, as I said. But I have two things on the community tab, and I'm going to tell you a story about the other painting while I'm working on this painting. And as you can see, when you go to the community tab, this Rysselberghe painting, who's I've never heard of him before, an Impressionist painter. And if you want to look at his other stuff, he did a lot of portraits, and they're all very interesting. But that kind of size is just nice for a portrait. So if you want to try a nice loose hand, and actually I was holding the pencil like that time. That's another way to go if you're doing something fairly loose. Okay. And we're doing head and shoulders for this, aren't we? But look at the head. It is in a view that's a 3/4 view. Now, if you compare this portrait to the other one that I've posted up, the other portrait is called Portrait of Madame X. The other portrait is from the side. Her head is viewed from the side. I would not advise, if you're new to portraits, starting with a portrait of somebody from the side, because it's the 3D-ness of the head that we want to learn from at the moment. And either head on or this 3/4 view, we call this one, is very nice for getting that roundiness of the light hitting the head. And I chose this this painting to do a drawing from because there isn't a big load of detail in it. So we're not going to get bogged down in detail. We're just going to have a nice time doing our shading and staying very loose. And look at the way I start. I've done my cross shape, come about halfway down the head, and I've got my eye sockets suggested. Okay, and I can bring the oval out there and then get rid of that bit. That's no problem. You see, the side of the face there. It's still the same egg shape. It's exactly the same egg shape as when we did it from the front. But now we've just brought the center cross that was in the head-on view this way. We brought that cross over a bit and we've curved it a little bit because we're going along the surface of our egg, yeah? And if you think eggs when you're doing this, it'll help you a lot. So look, draw a line down my egg. I'm going to eat that tomorrow morning. And then move it. See my line? Exactly the same thing, isn't it? I know this seems really simple, but sometimes to see it like this is to live it. No, to say it like that is a good illustration of something that you maybe weren't 100% really confident about, and now you see it, you go, yeah, it does work like that. Yeah, I can see how it works like that. Now, you can get problems lining up your irises in the eyeballs sometimes doing this 3/4 view. So it can be more challenging like that. But it's not that challenging in this one because in our reference photo on the community tab, we can see that there's so much shadow going on because of this hat shape, which is a simple. I actually have a video about these as well. How to do that shape there. Oops, top of my pencil came off. See that shape? That's an ellipse. And how to do ellipse simply, um, basically. And he looks very cartoony at the moment. He actually is good fun the way he looks at the moment. And he's got this sort of little pot hat on. So we keep working away on him. And the eyes, gonna make that eye look at us. And then the other eye is going to be easier, isn't it? So we're going to see more of the nostril on that side. And his nose, although noses come out at an angle, this one, he doesn't have a particularly prominent nose, so it's not at a huge angle. It's at that kind of angle. So we get the main features in. He has a big curvy mouth. And see, I'm ignoring the fact that there's all this colour going on and things. Now, I actually have the main things going on here at the moment now in this, and I'm happy enough, even though it doesn't look like him yet. You'll see. Have confidence. And I'll tell you a story while I'm finishing this off. And the story is about that other painting of Madame X. So you can listen to me tell the story while you're drawing along with me here, or maybe you're not drawing along yet. Hopefully you will have a go at doing this drawing exercise. Be later if you're not doing it now. So the Madame X portrait, why is she called Madame X? And who is it and everything? And why is it a good portrait? It's a very famous one. And yeah, it is a good portrait. But some of the reason it's a good portrait is it's by a portrait artist who was really popular and fashionable around the same time as this guy was working, actually. And Singer Sargent was the guy's name. And Sargent um, was very sought after by all the really fashionable types because he made you look very beautiful and glamorous if you were a rich person. And that's what rich people love. They love everybody, seeing how beautiful and glamorous they are. And we all like that, but they have the money to pay for the best portrait artist in the world to do that for them. So, and they get their beautiful dresses on, and Sargent turns up, and they look absolutely ravishing by the time he's finished with them. So he did this treatment for the lady in this portrait, and she is called Madame X because the portrait caused such a scandal when it was shown that he decided he had to repaint part of it to shut everybody up a bit about it because they were so outraged. And then he had to go anonymous with the sitter. Uh, had to make the sitter's name anonymous so that she wouldn't be forever tainted by the scandal. So I'm just going to get rid of this shape that I had in here, getting in the way of where the neck was going to be. Because the lady did have a name. It was something like Guio or something like that. You can actually look that up on Wikipedia. I can put in the link underneath the video in the comment afterwards. I didn't want to spoil the story before I did the live stream, but it caused a huge scandal, mainly, mainly partially, for the fact that the strap on the rather glamorous looking dress was hanging off one shoulder. And although she was rather, scandalous and racy lady in a lot of ways, thought of as such anyway, She was also thought of as terribly, that's a bit long, that nose, terribly glamorous, but he went too far, you see. But he kind of knew he was going too far, but he thought he'd get away with it because he was hoping to really make his name out of that painting. He really wanted to do that painting, and he did make his name out of it. So he wanted a bit of scandal, I think, personally. Um, but he didn't want quite as much as he got because it nearly ruined her, you know. So I will post a link about that. You can read about it on Wikipedia, and there's loads of articles about that painting online. But I didn't just include that painting scandal. I included it because it's an example of a painting that is a big statement painting, right? This painting that we're doing a drawing of at the moment isn't really a statement painting. It's a self portrait of a person, but the only statement it's making about it is it's about a guy smoking a pipe. It's a kind of a quiet little painting, whereas the other one has a lot of showmanship going on in it, doesn't it? Even from the very dramatic shapes in it. This painting of this Madam X, if it turned up in Vogue magazine, as a glamorous Vogue shoot or something, you wouldn't be surprised at all, would you? Um, so it's doing something different than this painting is trying to do, basically. So you have to think about that as well, you see. If you're doing a portrait of somebody, you're saying, well, really in your portrait, you've got to decide what are you trying to convey in the portrait. And always you're trying to tell the viewer something about the sitter. That's a given. You know, you want the viewer to engage in some way with the painting and have some sort of a relationship to the person it's a portrait of, you see. Notice I'm not ignoring the background in this either. And the background is bringing that head out, isn't it? This darkness in the background. And the shoulders are changing where things are as I go along because I'm making corrections. So yeah, that's it. You see, do you want to have a dramatic painting that has those dramatic shapes in it, like Madam X, that arm, that sweep of the arm going, or do you want to do a quiet study that's kind of about somebody, just thinking? They convey different things, don't they? Let's use the blender just to show how that works. And people can spend too long as well trying to get perfection. I would say you'd be probably best using your time when you're learning how to do portraits. You might be best using your time doing a lot of drawing of different people. And what we're going to do next week is I found wonderful photographs of a lady who's going to be so interesting to draw, and they're great photos to draw from as well. Sorry, I keep changing where the brim of the hat is, and you see how the rubber is used for that going back into something. Um, Edith Sitwell, I'll be drawing Edith Sitwell next week, and it's because there were fabulous photos of her taken by what's the photographer's name? I can never remember. Cecil B. Um, and he is so interesting because he is fantastic, or was a fantastic portrait photographer. So portrait photography is very, very different in nature to fashion photography. And people nowadays tend to not really think about um think about the difference. All that very much because we're so used to marketing and mass media that perhaps we've sort of forgotten there can be a difference. Um, Marketing is about desire, isn't it? And it's about creating a desire for objects, and it can objectify people as well, so that the people are wearing beautiful clothing and they are objects as well. And I would argue that actually, although that Madame X portrait is pre-marketing era, mass marketing era, if you like, it's still marketing. It's marketing her as a product in a way that this painting that I'm doing the drawing of here isn't marketing the person. Now, I'm not saying one is better than the other. I prefer one more than the other personally, just because I like very psychological sorts of portraits. But it's horses for courses, as they say. It depends on what you want to convey, you see. So if you have a friend and you want to convey them super glamorous and, you know, on front of their sports car or something, yeah, go for it. If you know that's what you want to do, or maybe you want to show them while they're deep in thought as sort of an intellectual person. I don't know what you want from your portrait that you're doing, but Edith Sitwell is going to be fantastically interesting to do because she is photographed numerous times by Cecil Beaton, and um, I can refer to her face from various different angles. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. And we're going to be working again next week in monotone, okay, one color. But I will probably have another portrait Friday live after that. And that will be working with color. But I really think that when you're doing portraits, learning to draw is the starting point. Even if you're going to work, you know, start going into color with something, you will get very, very lost with it if you don't get some basic drawing skills with it. And all the things that I've been doing today, all the exercises that I've been doing, so forth, so on and so forth, are to build those drawing skills. So now your task, if you enjoyed doing this today, your task is to go and find more things to draw, more people's portraits to draw, and don't worry about taking days over one portrait. Draw different people and use the skills that I've shown you, and the sort of approach to shading and everything that I've shown you, and the approach to moving from the general to the specific in order to start honing in on the 3D-ness of a head in order to move towards getting a likeness. Already you can see that this is looking more like the guy, even though it was a kind of as an impressionistic thing that didn't have loads and loads of detail in it. It was a great one to work from for practicing your shading, doing your shading, yeah. So where are you going to get if you can't get somebody sitting for you? Where would you get access to people to draw? Well, I tell you what I find very good. There are things online that are for models for life drawing and things, and they're not that great for. I don't think that they're great for portraits. I think what's better for portraits is if you look at things like Greek sculpture, or you look at things like Roman emperors' busts, i.e., heads of Roman emperors online. You can get some great stuff to draw because some of the Roman sculpture, you see, it's all photographed from different angles. And in fact, I would probably use I'll probably use a piece of sculpture for doing the drawing from later when I go to do that short. So there you are. You see, we have this guy in his Mac, various folds in it and everything. See, we haven't got a head floating in space, but it's all held together by light and shade. Yeah. And I could keep working away there, and it, tonally, it'll get even more specific. You see the way I can go back in and do darker areas just by leaning a little heavier. Didn't start super heavy, but I didn't obsess over each area and spend hours working on each area. I kept moving around, building the whole thing as a whole and then working back. That could be all much darker as well. And work back in for the shape. So go off and get a few more heads to do, and then practice those skills and come back next week, and we'll do more drawing, and I'll put in the reference next week as well. So if you want to draw this person, you might find different faces really interesting to me, and you might find your own references to do things from. But I will include links to references and things for you to work from, and you'll learn a lot. You see, so Tony was very helpful on the egghead, was terribly helpful for that session. So I think that looks like a real head, real neck, and real shoulders. And where's the light hitting from? Well, over this side, and slightly from above because it's casting a shadow. So you see. Um. So the next week again, we're just working with pencil next week. We're going to get a little bit more into. This week was all about shading, right? Staying loose, the idea of light, moving around an object, and light creating the object. Really, it's helping you get to the lightness. But next week, we will be doing more work on specific features because the features here have really only been suggested. I know. Oh yeah, well Tony was very nice dropping in, I have to say. Thank Tony. And I don't know if Tony will be here next week for anything, but he was good for illustrating something. And yeah, that's actually a handy thing to do because plasticine is terribly cheap. So it's very quick to make a little head and mess around with the head and mess around with the lighting. So don't forget if you get yourself a little bit of plasticine, you have a ready-made model there with different lighting conditions. So that is a fantastic exercise and very easy done because you're just rolling a little oval shape and making eyeballs and pinching up a nose, and then light it from different sides and from on top and draw it in each position. Only spend like 15 minutes or something on each sketch, but you're really you start understanding it then, you see. So then when we start moving in to really honing down on saying something like structure of eyes or something, uh, your drawing skills have come right up from being able to just handle a pencil really nicely and loosely without being all worried about it, and understanding the concept of light moving around a 3D object. Um, in a very simplified way of thinking of the head as an egg, basically, and the neck as a pillar. Um, and that's it, isn't it? So we'll see you next week. Then the week after that, if you want to start thinking about, if you're saying, oh yeah, I'm really excited about this idea about portraits, if you want to start thinking about it, you could think about getting some colored pencils. A lot of people have colored pencils in their kit already. The ones I use that I think are a really fantastic buy, and I would recommend. This will be 2 weeks' time before we get into this, to be honest with you. But I would recommend a watercolor colored pencil. They're great all round because you can do so much with these. You can get all kinds of them. You can buy them separately. If you're anywhere near an art shop, you have a look and see can you get these separately because I found they weren't too hard to get. So you're not stuck with just a little set of pencils that just maybe only have one skin color and that's it, or have one sort of blue or have one sort of red. You could actually buy like 5 or 6 colors that are in skin color ranges specifically for what we're doing, you see. uh, but if you can't get those kind and you can't buy them separately or anything, don't worry about it. Just turn up with colored pencils, but you won't need them next week. Okay, you won't need them next week. You'll just need pencil again, because drawing, drawing, drawing will going to really bring up skills in drawing if you don't already have skills. And if you do have skills, well, I hope you sort of uh, learned new tricks in that, you're thinking, oh, I wouldn't have approached it that way, or, I might have done this differently, or I never thought of doing it that way. You know, it's just different, isn't it? It's nice watching different artists approach things in different ways. So yeah, we'll see you next week. So there'll be at least 2 more parts to this. So you're probably relieved to be off trees for a little while, but don't worry because I will be back out amongst the trees, and I'm sure there'll be an upload or two involving trees as well. Um, so happy drawing in the meantime, yeah. And see you next Friday. And thanks for dropping in. Bye. Happy drawing.